Concepts. Reading drafts, some of my friends warned me that my heavy style was fit for the erudite, but not for the layman. That some of the concepts used in my book could be misunderstood. Hence, I put the main concepts in simpler form in the beginning pages. The book was built on two main pillars. Firstly, psychology. This section discusses the psychology of the lumpen masses in transformation. Masses migrated from villages to the metropoles, and in the process of urbanization, modernization, and secularization, swiftly lost their millennial values based on religion and tradition, and in need of at least 5 generations to construct modern secular values, especially ethical ones. Here, the clashes between the urge to cling to the inherent historical values and reformulate them in modernity versus the urge to unconditionally dump everything of heritage and join the band of modernists with the fear of being ostracized from the ruling, dominant elite. Secondly, the classes. 2 classes lived in tension in the Ottoman Empire. In the Platonist sense, the ruler and the ruled. The history of the tension between these 2 alienated classes, still continuing in the Republic, forms the second part of our book. Bourgeois. The word bourgeois, used in this book, does not denote the term capitalist in the Marxist sense, but bourgeois, i.e., within city walls, civilized, urban nobleman, referring to a person who has learned manners, protocol, and mutual respect over the centuries, and whose ethical and aesthetic values have reached a refined level, which we call the late Ottoman Istanbul Efendisi, gentlemen of Istanbul. As such qualities have evolved through centuries in Europe and Istanbul, such formation for the lumpen masses may require at least 5 generations to acquire. We may surmise Turkey, 90% peasant in the 1920s, past 3 generations of urbanization. It may need 2 more generations or another 40+ years for the settlement of modern values and to reach the new Istanbul Efendisi in Turkey. Lumpen. Lumpen is a German-based concept made famous by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. However, in this book, this concept is not used in the same sense of lumpen proletariat, that is, the poor masses lacking class consciousness in the Marxist sense. Here, a lumpen is a person who quickly, sometimes knowingly and eagerly, loses his rural morals and values, based on religion and tradition distilled over millennia, as he migrates to the metropole from the periphery. The term denotes the rough person, hick, who has not yet internalized the secular morality of the city. Even a college degree cannot give them the ethical and aesthetic refinement, the values which would require generations to evolve. Desherme. Basically, best defined in the Muqaddimah of Ibn Khaldun for former Islamic practices. For the Ottomans, Desherme is the non-Muslim slave soldier bureaucrat gathered from Balkan families, a practice which was started during the reign of Murad I and became an institution during the reign of faith. In a narrow sense, it is an institution of approximately 150 years between faith and Murad III. However, for the purpose of our thesis, the concept is used in defining the practice of alienating bureaucrats of a 500-year history. That is to say, a desherme is a young man taken from his village and educated at the elite palace college in Darun, and alienated from his town and roots. Alienation of a young man from his peasant values, family, even reaching levels of the hatred of his roots and self-hatred. Such alienating education philosophy continues in the Republican curriculum in our day. Simply, the more educated one becomes, the more alienated he is from his roots. Desherme and the Sultan were an inalienable duo getting strength from each other. However, when Ataturk abolished the Sultanate, the desherme body lost its brain. Fluttering headless for another century, by the 21st century, it gave in to the new bureaucrats of provincial heritage, appointed by the politicians of the rising periphery. Turkmen. A martial steppe race of Central Asia, having ruled China, India, Persia, Caucasus, Arab lands, North Africa, and East Europe. Turkmen is the founding core of both the Seljuk and the Ottoman empires. Although Turkmen is the founding core of both the Seljuk and the Ottoman empires, once they established these states, they were excluded from the administration. Given their martial spirit, they were assigned the military role of the guardians of these empires. Apart from 150 years of recruitment of Janissaries from the Balkans, non-Muslim Rayaya of the 600-year empire were not permitted to be soldiers. They were assigned crafts and trade. For our thesis, Turkmen refers to the Rayaya, the ruled, in the periphery as a whole. And the theme of our book is based upon the alienation of the Ottoman ruling Deşirme class from the founding core Turkmens. The term Turkmen not only denotes the settled ones, but also the Yoruk, wandering Turkmens, who were constantly forced to settle for tax collection and military recruitment. With the Republican awakening of Anatolia, Turkmen seized power 6 centuries later and took the state administration from the hands of the Deşirme, who were alienated from their origin. Thus, Turkmen goes back to work in the 21st century. Ataturk. For our thesis, we will examine Mustafa Kemal Ataturk from 3 perspectives. The first concern is about the question of whether he is on the side of the Deşirme bureaucrat class or on the side of the people. The clear answer is seen in the speech he gave at the opening of the Turkish Grand National Assembly on March 1st, 1922. The true owner and master of Turkey is the peasant, who is the actual producer. Indeed, for 7 centuries, we have wasted their labor and shed the blood of these people by sending them to different parts of the world, leaving their bones in battlefields. We have denigrated them with insults and humiliation. For 7 centuries, we have reduced them to servants with ingratitude, squandering their labor, treated them with scorn and derision. We have been thankless, arrogant, and oppressive against their self-sacrifice and benevolence. Today, in the presence of these true owners of the homeland, let us take our respectful stance with great shame and respect. One of the first operations of the leader who apologized to his peasants was to abolish the tithe, despite dire economic conditions and fierce opposition from his assistants. Ataturk's revolution, perhaps never understood until today, ended the Sultanate and left the Deşirme, the alienated Ottoman military civil bureaucrats, headless. Yet the peasants had to wait another century to topple the experienced, hardened historical ruling class, which Ataturk could not. A belated result in the 21st century was the overthrow of this headless ruling class from its millennial role by the periphery. Although Ataturk, like the author of this book, was of the historical Deşirme bureaucracy, he was against his class, which was alienated from the people. But he was helpless. As the Lone Star faded, Deşirmes, restarting with their new president, General İsmet İnönü, resumed enjoying their historical privileges until the 21st century. Perhaps the psychological and political rift between Ataturk and İnönü, near Ataturk's demise, had roots in this failure. Ataturk knew that the Republican People's Party was the party of the minority in the country. He died despondent and lonely. In general, competing bureaucrats suspect each other are lonely people. Indeed, the person most opposed to M. Kemal near his death was certainly his closest associate, once upon a time. Our second topic is Ataturk's philosophy. In his famous book, The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism, Max Weber elaborates on living for the next world versus this world among Catholics and Protestants. As a statesman, Ataturk was also stuck on these 2 approaches to life. The question of the time, temporal or spiritual. He noticed that Christian Europe had developed by passing from a spiritual to a material approach to life. and he wanted the same enlightenment for his people. The Turk, who had been sleeping for the hereafter for 1,000 years, had to wake up to the material world, like Max Weber's Protestants have done. Yet, we had no infrastructure. His dream of making his people materialist, interestingly, was realized by the economic revolutions of two pious presidents, Turgut Özal and Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Our third issue is at least as important as the first two, the issue of legitimacy. Even though nearly a century has passed since his death, Ataturk is still the main source of legitimacy in Turkish politics. Although urbanization, an important base for the middle class and democratic spirit, has caught momentum, Turkish democracy has not yet reached the maturity of getting power from the people. That's why, be it military juntas or politicians, aspiring groups for power still feel the need to get their legitimacy from the name of Ataturk, not from the people. As long as political legitimacy is based on the name Ataturk, Turkish democracy will not feel the need to take its legitimacy from the people. It will not be able to prove its maturity and will be delayed in this regard. In short, the source of political legitimacy will still remain Ataturk, but not the people. Encouragement of the Western world to such anti-democratic urges is based on the wrong premise that Ataturk wanted pro-European values. He was a positivist, yes, but not Europeanist. 15th of July, 2016, Democracy Day. The Ottoman and Republican juntas could overthrow any government whenever they desired, in the comfort that there would be no grassroots reaction against them. The night of July 15th, 2016, was a historical turn. It was the revolution of the millennium, equal or more tectonic than the French Revolution. People resisted tanks with bare hands, stood up for their elected president for the first time, gave 250 martyrs, and more than 2,000 wounded. National Congress, Presidential Palace, and General Staff Campus were bombed by Air Force jets. It was the first bloody clash in Republican history. Any junta going against people's will would, from then on, know that it should be ready for a bloody internal war. The millennial practice of palace coups was no longer possible. Grassroots were the new sovereign. On the 15th of July, 2016, Turkish people declared to the world that from now on, they would protect their elected politicians by blood and would not leave them at the mercy of juntas, modern janissaries, anymore.